Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel. Thanks for logging on. Today we are discussing the Patek Philippe 5270G-019. It's the 5270 in white gold with sunburst blue dial. You can see this third generation dial 5270 in white gold and purchase it on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full sales listing for this watch with additional accessories included in the sale, high resolution images for your desktop, and naturally complete pricing details for this Patek Philippe 5270G-019. Now, there were a couple of generations, and there continue to be different generations of 5270 dials. We've seen a platinum salmon for the first time in 2018. 2011 was the initial variant without tachymetric dial. The tachymeter arrived along with the somewhat controversial chin profile in 2013, and 2015 found a judicious blend of tachymeter and chin that's been to the liking of all ever since. The watch is handsome on the wrist and easy to wear, even though it is a 41mm formal watch. My 16cm circumference wrist works well in concert with the lug-to-lug dimension of 49.5mm, so across my wrist, as you can see in a broader profile, it fits well, and that's pulling the strap down for a proper and secure seat. I believe you could wear this watch on a wrist as small as, I would say, 14.5cm in circumference with security and a handsome profile on the wrist. It is not excessively thin, nor is it excessively thick. I measure it 12.8mm from sapphire to sapphire. You can see that the case flank is generously sloped and concave, so it will slide underneath the dress cuff. Again, the lug-to-lug dimension is defined as much by the distance, 49.5, as by the actual shape of the lugs, which you can see in profile have a nice downturned kick to them, so they will wrap around your wrist rather than flare out. Even though they do have a very distinct sculptural presence, and we'll talk about that in a moment, they will work with the shape of your wrist rather than flaring out if you have that borderline 14.5cm size. The strap is nicely made. It is a matte navy blue, large rectangular scale alligator leather with a folded edge and a monotone stitch. On the underside, it's calfskin, and the watch features Patek Philippe's pull-tab spring bars for quick removal, absent tools, for cleaning between the lugs, or simply to change the strap on your watch. The clasp is substantial. Gray gold, 18 karat like the watch. Gray gold is white gold, but homogeneous, so it doesn't need to be plated. It has the same white aesthetic, it's the same 18 carats. The difference between what Patek used pre-2006 and post-2006 is that this is now called gray gold, and if you scratch it, scuff it, or dent it, there's just more white metal underneath. You will never see a milky yellow substrate. It also provides a lot of heft. With a massive clasp for a massive watch head, the watch will be nicely counterweighted on your wrist if you choose to wear it loose. That's the advantage of having a heavy bracelet or clasp to counterweight a watch head. Now, the watch head itself is beautifully contoured. As I mentioned earlier, the lugs are even more dramatically stepped out from the case flank than they were on the previous generation 5970. They have their own form, they have their own presence. Because they are rather generous in proportion, they help to add an additional component to the style of the watch, rather than being a soft extension as you would find in a blended lug Calatrava. These are a little bit harder edged, more masculine, and more distinctly vintage inspired. The watch has a profile with several horizontals. As you can see, the junction of the case band and the bezel, the junction of the case back and the mid case, and the fluted profile of the lugs that extends into the junction of bezel and case. So the watch does have a distinctly creased character to it. Think of it as a nice pressed suit. The handsome and nuanced dial, I'm going to call it that because there is a lot going on, becomes easier and easier to read as you become more familiar with the watch. Let's start from the outside and work our way in. Outboard, there is a scale calibrated for seconds, so you can easily read the seconds, or if you will, the minutes radially. You'll note that there is a tachymetric scale between the outer second scale and the inner dial. This allows you to gauge the speed of an object over a fixed distance, such as a standing kilometer. It's a sporting complication for sportsmen who follow racing horses, track and field, or sports cars, and with a base 1000 it is calibrated to track the speed of fairly fast things, so track and field is probably out. Now, inboard you have all applied white gold indices. They are diamond polished to match the diamond polished white gold hands at center. You have leaf style hands for hours and minutes and a counterweighted lancet style seconds hand. The idea behind making them from white gold is that they will never oxidize or tarnish. Moving inboard, you can see twin counters, constant seconds at 9 o'clock, chronograph minutes up to 30 at 3 o'clock. You'll also note, if you view the watch from head-on, that they're slightly below the hands at center. That's one of the underlying traits of the caliber 29-535 that's inside the watch. You'll see the same arrangement on the dial of the 5170. Continuing down, you'll see flanking the radial date display. On the left, or I should say on the 9 o'clock side, you will see an aperture that is the AM/PM indicator, the day-night indicator. When it turns dark, don't attempt to use the pusher correctors to set the watch. That's the time when the watch is involved in its own turnover of its date automatically. Don't attempt to set manually because you will crash the movement. So that's there. It also acts as a convenient AM/PM if you're picking up the watch after a period unwound. Now you'll note that there is a counterpart on the 3 o'clock side. That is the leap year phase indicator that tells you which of the 4 quarters of the leap year cycle you are currently in. And finally, within the radial date, there is a moon phase, crescent-shaped, that is programmed out to over 122 years. So in the 123rd year, you will have to adjust the moon phase. That'll give you plenty of time to read up. Now, the watch does feature a vintage-inspired set of lozenge or rectangular pushers. You'll note that the profile of the watch from the crown side is minimalist. There's no crown guard structure or fairing. I'm also going to point out the fact that when you start the movement, the column wheel, the lateral clutch, and if you're about to jump the minute, as we are here, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see that better, but the watch has an awful lot going on when the movement starts up, especially when it's about to jump the minute. Watch the minute jumper just under my thumb. We engage the lateral clutch. The minute jumper arms and fires, just like that. That's why you want a lateral clutch with a column wheel and a manual wind movement. You see everything all the time. The lateral clutch, which remarkably is fully jeweled. This is something you only see in high horology. No bushings, all jewels for the pivots of the intermediate and driving wheel of the chronograph clutch. Now you can see the horns and the levers of the chronograph interacting with the capped column wheel. A capped column wheel has a couple of benefits. First, it provides a platform for a beautiful black polished topping, but also because traditionally it helps the impact resistance of the watch. If there's a shock or a disruption or a bump that's unexpected, the cap helps to keep the horns of the levers from becoming displaced and popping out of the crenellated towers of the column wheel. So it does have a functional root, as does most watch finishing. But speaking of finishing, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about the tech. Compared to the 48-hour power reserve of its predecessor, the CH2770, this, and we'll try to see if we can focus a little bit closer here, this movement has a 65-hour power reserve. It also beats at a higher rate. The old watch was 18,000 in the 5970. The 5270 has a modern 28,800 vibration per hour beat rate. Some important things do stay the same, however, as the movement features Patek Philippe's tough and precise Gyromax free-sprung regulation system, as well as an overcoil hairspring. So it still uses a metal hairspring. They have not gone to Spiromax because this watch is adjusted in an extraordinary 6 positions. As I often mention, chronometer standard generally is 5. This watch is adjusted in 6. And a overcoil hairspring helps the watch to keep consistent time with a minimal difference delta or variation when it's regulated and then tested in multiple positions. That's the advantage of a traditional metal hairspring with an overcoil architecture. Elsewhere, this is a high horology movement in finish as well as in specification. You'll also note one of the features historically absent on Patek watches and still rare in the catalog. It features hacking or stop seconds. Now you can see the variable inertia balance bolts of the Gyromax free-sprung system. So it does feature hacking seconds. That's one of its other technological advancements over the old CH2070. I should mention, or 2770 I should say. I should mention the watch 30 meters water resistant, has a sporting disposition about it, but it is not an aquatic watch. All that you see here pivots on 33 jewels, and I should also mention the watch is finished the standard you would expect of the old Geneva hallmark, albeit blazoned with the Patek Philippe crest on the bridges. So what are you getting? You're getting beautiful and richly textured Côte de Genève, which you can see to good advantage from this angle, perfectly aligned across the bridges and applied with the traditional abrasive wheel rather than stamped as on many watches, even in the high horology space. You'll note that there is an immense amount of optically smooth black polish on the screws. All of those screw heads, as well as the cover for the stud holder on the balance and the black polished cap for the column wheel feature that highest standard of optical finish, so poly noir, turning black at certain orientations to the eye. Moreover, you can see from this angle right here, especially on the chronograph bridge structure, but clearly when I turn the watch flush to the camera, all of the edges of levers and bridges that are immaculately hand-rounded and mirrored, anglage of the highest order, the same treatment in a partridge eye fashion applied to the jewel sinks. More than that, there is a tight and even perlage across the base plate, such as underneath the balance. The levers of the chronograph generally have a grained or satin finish to them, and this is the kind of watch that could easily be purchased with a loop thrown in, but you're going to want to buy a separate loop, and a great one. I recommend loop system at least 6 power to get the most out of this watch should you decide to bring it home. See it on our website and decide for yourself.